Detection Collaborative, a detection dog training trio with Stacy Barnett.
Hi.
Robin Greubel.
Hey there.
And Crystal Wing.
What's up?
With humor and a big dose of theory, our trio talks practical training advice and features interviews with top trainers and scientists.
It's Canine Detection Collaborative.
Welcome back to the Canine Detection Collaborative. I am here with my stupendous, wonderful, outrageously amazing co-host, Robin Greubel.
Hello.
And Stacy Barnett.
Hello.
And my name is Crystal Wing, and I want to start off with a little special shout out to our podcast man, Zach. He does such a good job with our podcast always, and we're so thankful for him. And he let us know that we are now in the top 2.5% of podcasts globally. And so we definitely want to put a shout out to him for making us sound so good, but also to all of you for listening. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Props to all of you guys. Yay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, what a cool thing that you guys have done for us. You know, we're just kind of sitting around, hanging out, chatting about dogs, and here you are listening to us every week. So
woohoo.
Keep on doing that.
Yeah.
If you have any friends that you think might enjoy some of our topics, let them know.
Make sure to share.
And if you have any ideas for topics, let us know too.
Yes, that's in our Facebook thread. So make sure you go there and add that in.
It's pinned. It goes to a little Google form. Make sure you fill out the little Google form because we look through those to have come up with brilliant ideas that come from you.
And today's brilliant idea came from Stacy. So I'm going to share so that she can start talking about it. I think that I'm following along. So we'll kind of see. So I'm thinking that, a lot of people say consistency is key, but what if sometimes consistency is holding you back? So that might be part of what we talk about today, because we're also diving into kind of one of the trickiest balancing acts I think there is in dog training. It's how to set criteria, when to hold the line, and when to bend without breaking. So some of us are working towards sport, some are operational deployment. We want to go into both of those realms and knowing what to expect from your dog and yourself, because that all can make or break your training. So the questions that I think we're really going to try to hone in are, how do you decide what your criteria should be in the beginning? And maybe even harder, how do you know when it's time to adjust? So we're going to be having a lot of fun today. So Stacy, let's go.
Oh. That was, literally it was when we were like, well, what are we talking about? Stacy pipes in with this and we're all like.
It just popped in my head, like just kind of popped in there. It's kind of weird how that worked. It just went poof.
It's kind of funny when you can have those topics, and I can tell when we end up having those discussions, because I get the German Shepherd look at my phone.
The German Shepherd look.
The head cock.
Oh. I feel like
you had me on that one too.
What?
It's the head cock where I'm like, huh. And then it's usually followed by a, ooh. That's really
I'm just sitting here going, I'm like the German Shepherd.
Well, I was at work and then I'm trying to get ready to go to the seminar. And so my brain is so overloaded. I didn't really get to prep for this one. So I kind of had the same thing. And I was like, sounds good. See you there. So Stacy, how do you decide? What criteria are you going to do in the beginning? How are you going to adjust? What do you want to start talking about?
So, it's going to depend on what I'm doing. But for my sports dogs, honestly, it comes down to what is being judged. For me, honestly, I personally try to get the criteria where the dog is going to maximize their performance, but I can work as quickly and efficiently as possible while not having to have the burden of really, really complicated behaviors or anything. I want to be able to I want to execute on my objective. My objective is finding hides fast and calling them as quickly as I can, because it is a time sport. So in nose work, in the US with the National Association of Canine Scent Work, which is where I trial in mostly, we're not judged on the final response. So if I can recognize that my dog's at the hide, I can quit. And anytime I start to think about adding in final response behaviors, I have to ask myself, because that also means I have to maintain that. Because once you train it, you have to maintain it. And you have to make sure that you're maintaining it to an accurate degree. And if I'm asking for a lot of criteria, that is going to be something else that I have to maintain. And it's going to have to be something else that I have to make sure that is going to be able to be held to an accurate level. And I have to say that that's a lot more training that if it's not necessary, I'm not going to do it. But in the case of if I have a dog that really needs a trained final response, and I'm using like an example of, when Powder was all of a sudden, I'm like, woo, we're not doing that on containers anymore. I put a trained final response on her and it was absolutely necessary. And it was fun to train, but at the same time, it's the trained final response itself is so easy to train poorly. So that's where part of it comes in, is that I'm not going to necessarily, this goes for my students as well, to give them really, really high criteria if they're going to have a hard time maintaining that, or if the dog is going to have a hard time maintaining that. But if it's necessary, it absolutely is necessary. But it's a little bit different than maybe criteria that I have for Prize when she's doing search and rescue. And that is also very, very different criteria. But on the sport side, that's kind of how I keep that balance.
I agree with you because I'm training, I have adjustments in my criteria, even if I'm doing operational level stuff, right? For all of my detection dogs. And I tell people all the time, Nico has a predefined, FEMA tells me what his trained final response is supposed to be. It has to be a bark and hold. So I have that criteria, but even within that criteria, there is a lot of wiggle room. When you start looking at it, there's the criteria, the standard, the testing criteria says the dog must stay at source and bark. Everybody interprets it as the dog must bark at source. So if you think about those two different things, the dog must stay at source and bark. There is no indicator as to where the dog's mouth is directed when it's barking. But if we say the dog must bark at source, all of us tend to think the dog has to bark at source.
Rather than be at source.
And bark. Right. So two different things.
Yeah.
And I have seen a lot of people be so incredibly focused on the dog must bark at source and not have things split out so well that they end up confusing the dog and creating all sorts of problems in their training. And so this is part of slices, not lumps. And then I've also flipped to the other side too, even with my sit and stares. In the grand scheme of things, especially for some of the operational level dogs who are out on the street doing this every day, they have so many things that they're trying to train. Is a stare really the most important thing? Actually, maybe not if you're a narcotics dog handler. Sitting, and can the handler pinpoint where the dog's nose was to be able to detect odor and pull it out? Absolutely. Is the super duper solid stare super important in that spot? Maybe not. For a bomb dog, we might have that discussion because I'd really like my bomb dog turning into a nice little statue. Don't move because I don't want you to explode.
Yep.
Right? You have to pick and choose your criteria because that's where you're going to either spend your time teaching your dog a ton and have to have really strict criteria and a lot of fortitude as a trainer to withhold that criteria, or you can let something slide and you're going to have to either spend some other times, other places, either maintaining or fixing.
Can I talk about sliding?
Yes, go ahead and talk about scope creep.
Oh, I want to talk about elbows.
Oh, talk about elbows.
Oh, should we talk about elbows?
Yes, please talk about elbows.
So
I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about elbows. And I'm like actually kind of excited about the elbows. So Prize is refined, right? So her TFR for her refined is she runs back, down's at handler, right? Now the down is then I tell her, show me. This is for her search and rescue stuff. If you guys are getting confused, this is not for nose work, right? Tell her, show me. She runs back to the subject and then she starts a ping pong. And every time she comes back, elbows down, she's in a down. And then I say, show me. And what I found was when she gets more tired or when the day is going very long, sometimes I start to see her do this hover where the elbows are just slightly off the ground. And I've had a lot of people like at seminars going, why don't you just ask for the sit? Like, why do you have to ask for the down? I've had this question a lot. And I kind of had to think about this a little bit. Now, what's really, really, really interesting is that I have now transitioned, and this is really cool how this worked out, is that now I am holding her to elbows on the ground, but she doesn't get the show me unless the elbows are on the ground. And now the show me is actually acting as a secondary reinforcer, and it's increasing her drive to run back to the subject. So by holding that criteria and being consistent with it, I'm getting more drive back to the subject. And it's really, really cool because it's actually maintaining the purity of the chain, and it's making the chain more. Well, she's a lot more motivated. She's always kind of motivated through it, but it's helping to maintain that drive on the way back and forth. And it's increasing the quality of her TFR in ways that it's really cool to see.
And basically it's a location specific marker.
Yeah. In a lot. Yeah. If you kind of think about it, it's right. I mean, it's kind of delayed, right? Because she doesn't usually get her ball until the end, but she knows that her reinforcement is coming.
Right.
And it's like, this gets her closer and closer and closer to that reinforcement. And she does not get the show me. She's sitting there going, please say, show me. Right.
Right.
So the elbows go on the ground and then it becomes a secondary reinforcer. Show me. She's
and
off.
away she goes. Awesome.
Yeah. So it's really kind of cool.
So, I've been over here writing stuff down, right?
Of course you have.
I've been trying so hard to not interrupt because I'm bursting at the seams.
Things, yes.
So I wrote down some, hopefully I can remember it now.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing are 3 main takeaways already. And for me, it's clarity.
Oh my God, we're done already.
No. It's beginning, but it's just the things that I want.
15 minutes in, we're good.
The things I want to build on, right?
Okay.
So I hear clarity. That's the first thing that I hear that's really prominent. And I think that's when you have that clear picture in your head. And I'm an art teacher. Okay. So I can't get away from my life, right? So I think about this clear picture in my mind, and then it's going to be a lot easier for my dog to paint that picture and paint the one that's already in my mind if I have clarity. Mm-hmm. So it's like I gave the example on my Facebook group where I don't want to tell the dog what not to do. It's like going to the restaurant and the waiter asking you, what do you want to order? And you're like, I don't want the special. Okay. So you have to be really clear and let them know what you want. The second key thing, there's 3 of them, is consistency. And you cannot hold the line if you are not sure where that line is. And
Correct.
The consistency is not about perfection, but it's about being predictable. That's what I'm hearing there. And then the third one that I'm really excited about also getting into is flexibility. So I do think our dogs and we are always learning. Even when we're adjusting, we're still teaching. But the thing that it was something Robin said, and I can't remember what it was now, I'm sorry. But there's this idea that this temporary adjustment is not the same as a permanent compromise. It's just a moment in time. And I think people that I work with and help, that sometimes they're like, that's not the end picture. I can't do that right now. I can't do that in competition. I hear that a lot from people, but I can't do that in the trial. And we're in the beginning phases. Yeah. And it's like, well, here's where we have to bring in all 3 of those things. Mm-hmm. I have to be consistent that I'm looking at my learner in the stage they're in, being clear as to what they need in that moment. Yes, you're right. It is not trial picture. It is not certification picture, because we are not at testing phase. We are at learning, teaching phase. And I have to know that I'm going to make a lot of adjustments and things that may go against what I would do in a trial or a certification. those are the three things that I've been hearing right now that to me are the meat of this. So I don't know.
Right. It is. Absolutely. And the thing that I hear from a lot of people sometimes is, oh my God, progression plans are so rigid. They're so rigid. Actually, no, they're not. Because if you actually implement a progression plan and you're looking at it, progression plans are actually a written down form of shaping, but they're a way to keep yourself accountable so that you know where you're going. And if you have a mistake, you can go back to where you didn't. And I'm working with a new intern, and I made her write out a progression plan for pairing a dog to odor. And it's really, really nice because she went to Kobo Skills canine science program. So she's seen some of it and she's walked through it. And so she started writing it out, and she was going off of some other stuff that I was doing because I'm doing directionals with Flash. And I was like, well, I have to do 7 repetitions with Flash. And she's like, so I want to do 7 repetitions with my dog to pair them to odor. And I'm like, now, wait a minute. I have competing criteria over here because out of these 7 repetitions, I have 3 that she has to go, stop, go. And she has 4 where she's got to go straight to the comb. You have 1 where they're going to odor. How fast do we actually want to get them to the end criteria, which is finding odor independently and doing their trained final response? And I'm like, do you think 7 is enough, too many, or not enough? And she's like, oh, it's too many. Yeah. So let's talk about what shaping is. So for me, that's what a progression plan is. It's and as you do a progression plan, if you're making your slices really thin, you're very deliberate about which criteria you're adjusting. Are you adjusting a distance? Are you adjusting a duration? Are you adjusting difficulty? And that's all sort of taken into account. And you do it systematically. And so it's an organized way to shaping instead of, I love 101 things to do with a box. I absolutely.
No. Oh, I hate
Knows where people hate that.
I know. Okay. Let's 101 things to do with a climb.
Oh, that's
How
way
about that
better.
one? Okay. We'll
With
do
an
100
object.
with an object. I
Yeah,
like a
with
climb, right?
Yeah.
How about 101 things?
Sorry, my brain just exploded. I'm like, no.
I'm sorry.
not
101 things to do with the climb or with a corunda bed, right?
Okay. All right.
Something like that.
I'm thinking as a listener, maybe that hasn't made a progression plan before,
Right.
or is new to the idea, when you're starting a new behavior, how do you decide what the must-have pieces are versus the what can be shaped later?
I have a whole webinar for that.
Do you want to give like some key things like what?
Well, I know what my end behavior is, right? I've defined do I want my dog to bark on cue? What is that end behavior? Or is it, I want a really nice detection dog? And then I have to start thinking backwards what skills does my dog need to have? That's one thing. Then what behaviors does my dog need to know in order to be able to do that thing? And when we start writing progression plans, you have progression plans that build behaviors, which is shaping a behavior. And then I also believe that you have progression plans that build skills, because you can't actually build some skills until you have solid behaviors.
Yes.
You can't do a full healing pattern for Mondio until you have some of your basic behaviors already on board with the dog. So you have to start on, okay, you know what? You have to have a good basic position. Is that where they sit and heel?
Yes.
Okay.
But also I'm thinking about when I'm teaching a behavior, I'm also thinking about all the emotions that are attached to it. So I'm really using that in my beginning. So I'm not looking for any precision. I'm looking for the attitude, And then after I have the attitude and the energy and the excitement, then I start getting a little bit more precision. But until I don't start with any precision type stuff.
Oh, yeah. I guess I classify all of that under all of that attitude and incitement and all of that stuff for me goes underneath motivation.
I just wanted to bring that in because that's really what I'm teaching in the beginning. So in all the things I'm teaching, I'm doing it through my play and my motivation, and then the play becomes the behaviors.
Right.
And so that way I'm capturing the emotions that I want behind the skills that I'm teaching. And even what I've really found recently, I've been doing a lot more targeted conditioning with Radish. And at the same time, I'm working on positions and stand now. I never noticed like how powerful her stand looks. It's such a thing, but the conditioning and the flexibility is such a key important both ways, whether they're operational or
Right.
sport. And so that's something that doing targeting has really helped me. So that's also now something I'm really considering as a foundation piece to help with that. Because if they don't have time, then I can't ask them to have duration sit.
And, what's really funny is I've been going through and I need to start cutting out time in my training schedule for more conditioning in my dogs, because I do think that it will help keep them from getting injured. And my dogs do stupid stuff. I mean, duh, Nico.
hey,
right?
preach.
Yeah. So that's one of those things. But yes, and I think about, I've started my own workout program and I'm thinking about how much stronger I feel, especially after having my knee replaced. So I know that's a thing. But yes, Crystal, I absolutely agree with you. And I think Crystal and I are saying the same thing, but we're just using different words to describe it, because I do also want the enthusiasm, but I classify it under motivation and engagement. And when I start shaping a behavior, that comes under, I still want it precise, but my precise might be for a half a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And my precise. And so what I've really started doing with a lot of my students when I talk to them about time, like duration time,
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking in Mississippis and we're talking in syllables.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about a Mississippi, that's what we're taught for those who live abroad, at least before we had phones who would time things out for us. We used Mississippi as a way to count a second. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi.
Because people are probably like, Mississippi's what?
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's probably a Midwest thing too, honestly.
It might be a Midwest thing. But anyway.
And we're going to say "ope" after it as well.
I know.
I use a breath. Like when I tell people kind of think about a breath or think about a heartbeat or something like that.
Okay, yeah. Then I have people who are like, I can't breathe. I'm like, okay.
I say 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000.
Right.
That's what I do.
But with Mississippis, I can tell people keep track of which syllable or which, I can't think. Yeah, which syllable you're doing the marking on. Is it the first set of S's or the second set of S's or the P's?
MISSISSIPPI.
Or which I are you doing it on? Because then you're down into tenths of a second.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about being really precise with our behaviors, we're down to talking tenths of a second in dog world.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, I don't do that with my 10-week-old puppies. Now, okay, yeah, I do. That's how I get up to 5 to 7 second sits on a puppy, a sit and stare with a cap, right? How else do you do that? But I'm counting Mississippis. And I'm doing a bunch of training sessions in a day with that little monster. Plus, we're doing play, and then they pass out in their crate. Yay me. They're sleeping.
I go to the behavior chain and I try to figure out like what part of the behavior chain is going to be most critical for that task. And that's where I focus in most of my criteria on. And so I might tighten up the criteria depending upon what the requirements are going to be for that task. Because again, if I go back to like the, nose work example, end of locate, right? That's the most important part.
Right.
You can get the prettiest train final response. And if it is off source,
Doesn't matter.
sorry, too bad, so sad, right? But if I look at prize, like, she's out of sight finding people. If she does not give me a really good report, you know what? We're going to miss a person.
Right. And one of the things that I think about, especially with the sport dog people,
Mhm.
it's not that I have all the time in the world for my professional detection dogs to make their trained final response, because at a certain point, I'm still also reading change of behavior, but that the change of behavior is the cake, right? It is the actual meat of what you really, really want. The trained final response is the icing that goes on the top of the cake.
Assuming you can see the changes of behavior, not that you can have the ability to recognize, is that you're actually in the right location
To be able to see it.
to be able to see it.
Right.
And if I'm thinking wilderness air scent,
You may not be able to see
maybe not.
it.
Maybe you're working
Right.
at night.
Well, and that's why we have a trained final response that's tested out of sight for a lot of things, right? Because we have to have that, because our dogs, especially for the search and rescue dogs, are working out of sight. Our narcotics and explosives dogs, a lot of the time, are working within sight. You can still get the change of behavior, and you can be like, oh my gosh, there it is. And you still get the trained final response. It's still back to icing.
Yeah. And that's the same thing with nose work. And
Right.
the thing is like when you don't have to have the TFR to get a yes in nose work.
Correct. Right.
And so for me, it comes down to complexity, because also trying to maintain, because again, it is so easy to train it poorly.
Right.
And the amount of students that I work with where the biggest problem has to do with how their TFR was trained, that if it's kind of like if we didn't add all that criteria on someone who wasn't ready for that, or a dog that wasn't capable, really honestly, of shouldering that level of criteria and maintaining drive.
It's a lot.
Right. If that hadn't happened, the performance would be a lot higher to begin with.
Right. Right. And so I think figuring out what all those little pieces are really important. And knowing in your criteria or what you need to work on first and where your criteria needs to be at. Some of that is asking the dog questions. Can you set up yes and no questions? Because then you're basically doing a form of a functional assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do this here? No. Can you do this here? No. Can you do this here? No. And for me, it comes down to, if you are out walking with your dog and you turn to your dog, or you just say sit, and you do not at any point do anything else,
Mm-hmm.
and your dog doesn't sit, and it's should be expecting a sit or something, right? It is not under the stimulus control of the word sit. It is not fully generalized. So therefore, if the dog runs into odor, is it prepared to do a sit in that situation? Hopefully, if you've quote unquote turned it on,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. That's one of those things where I look at people and I'm like, okay, if you are going out and asking your dogs questions and finding out what it can and cannot do, it's giving you the criteria that you have to start working within out in the real world. I know that my dog can't sit on a verbal cue away from me at 30 feet. If it goes and finds odor, can it sit away from me at 30 feet? I don't know the answer to that question.
It's a great
Yeah.
question.
That's been a big one on Facebook that I've answered several times for people when they've said, my dog has a duration problem. And a lot of times they're talking about where they're already at a distance. And so it's a great time to break up the Ds and go, okay, well, can your dog do that outside of odor? And usually they're like, well, no, I've never tried it.
Right.
Well, let's not make odor be the thing that teaches them how to sit at a distance away and a duration. Like that's asking a lot. So let's teach those skills first.
Right.
And when we're thinking about the flexibility, I go back to that. You're always asking questions, and that's the flexible part.
Right.
The criteria is a conversation. It's not a commandment. And if you're not willing to adjust, you're not really listening.
Correct.
And I think that's the big thing that a lot of people don't hold dear. It's just like my dog must do it. But no, criteria really is a conversation, because when you're adjusting, it doesn't mean you're lowering. It means you're helping the dog find the way forward. And it's not as a failure on you. It's not a failure on the dog, because you've already started with the end in mind, but you have to meet the dog where they are right now. And so again, that's in that teaching phase. We're always adjusting and being flexible with them. That's the really cool part, though, is because the more and more that I'm learning and really practicing clearer expectations, I'm finding myself to be so much more confident, and I'm finding my dogs to be more confident. Just having the clear expectations, because when I have that goal in mind and I can now deviate on my way there, because it is never linear. We all know that. I mean, and nothing in life really is, it's maybe driving, but even that, but please stay in your lane.
Yes,
I was going to say, that depends.
But I have that confidence now because I'm asking myself along that path, at what point am I going to reward? How am I going to reward? And because I'm asking myself those questions, I can start breaking the pieces down more. And I'm looking at it as a chain of behaviors. And so at any point, I know if this fails here, I know where to go back. But one thing that I have found, and I'll change my mind again because I do it all the time, I try not to have more than 2 failures.
Correct.
If I have 2 failures, then I go, okay, I need to adjust. And what my go-to is currently, I used to just change it on the fly right there, and I would just make it easier. And I don't like doing that now necessarily. So what I prefer doing now is I've messed up twice. And I'll say I've messed up because maybe the environment is overfacing them. Maybe what I'm asked, there's something that's happening. And if I can't figure it out in that moment to change my environment or to make it so that they can move forward, I will go do a different behavior.
Yes.
And then it will give me a chance to cycle back to then make the adjustment I need, so that it's a new repetition. It's not just that I made it easier in that moment.
Correct.
Because you're going to have some dogs that are actually going to see that pattern, and they will actually train you to make it easier. And you end up with a dog, and this happens a lot with the lower drive dogs, where the dog does less and they do less and they do less and they do less. And the handler does more and the handler does more and the handler does more and the handler does more. And
sounds like high school education.
Yeah. So, I see this sometimes where I'm like, I'm looking at, I'm like, if you're working harder than your dog. And I see this a lot of times with a really low drive dogs. The dog has shaped the handler to keep making things easier and is shaping the handler to take more and more responsibility. And I see this all the time with the low drive dogs.
Dash did this to me.
Oh, well, he's not a low drive dog, but
no,
they can do that. They can absolutely do that, though.
Dash trained me to do this because he learned that if he sat down and he itched his collar while we were working,
okay,
I would stop and I would look at him and I would give him a cookie. And I would ask him to go back to work.
Oh,
yes. And so I very successfully.
You wouldn't do that now. I know you.
No. No, I learned.
I'm not chaining that in. Are you nuts?
I know. You know what? It's funny. Now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I've recognized that. Yes, knock it off. And no, we're not doing that. And
I'm not reinforcing that. Are you kidding me?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop it. It's easy to get sucked in. And when you're getting frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I do too, Crystal, I'll do the whole, okay, we've had a couple of failures. And even today, I was doing something with Flash. I was doing my send outs and we were working on my go, stop, goes. And so for those of you who haven't been involved in my latest drama, of what I'm trying to teach Flash to do is we're working on the progression plan of her running 30 meters to a cone. She's wearing a radio around her collar, and halfway to or somewhere along the way, she's got to, by over a verbal cue over the radio, I give her the stop cue. She is supposed to stop. And then I say go, and she goes to the cone 30 meters away. Out of 7 repetitions, 3 she has to go, stop, go. 4 repetitions, she's got to go straight to the cone. She can't have any mistakes for the 7 total repetitions in a row. And so I'm training, and the second repetition in or third repetition in, I was doing a go, stop, go, and she blew off the stop. So I did it. She got to the cone. I didn't reinforce her. I called her back. The next one out, she did a stop. I rewarded the stop. And then we did 8 repetitions after that. Perfect. Either go, stop, go, or straight to the cone. Because I had put the go, stop, go on a variable schedule of reinforcement. She didn't know when the ball was going to come when she stopped. So then it became important. And I was like,
yes. Oh my gosh. This is actually me healing with Brava right now. Because I taught her the moving down out of a heel. And she's really nice. We're healing. I can tell her down. She'll down. I can keep going. Right. So now, and I reinforce that, right? Because she did a great job. So now we're healing along. And now every so often she just downs. And I'm like, you stinker. I'm like, that was really pretty, but that's not what I wanted.
right.
So, and it's so interesting how when you start to reward some piece of criteria, how the dog really understands that you're really excited about this behavior and you're getting, they're getting reinforced. And now that can go back and kind of mess up everything else. So you have to kind of keep that balancing act.
Well, and that's why chaining is so important. And we find this out when you do the find refind. It's a balancing act that at whatever point you want to be able to pull out the chain.
Yep.
And you reinforce that particular link that might be showing the slightest bit of weakness. So you just throw a little reinforcement on it. And be like, yep, that's the piece that needs reinforcement for today. And then they're like, okay, got it.
Yeah. And you have to be careful what you reinforce with when you do that too.
Yeah.
Because you can swing the pendulum. Like all of a sudden, if I give the ball now to the subject, now she's like, that part then it doesn't happen anymore. But in the beginning, then she didn't want to come back to me because she's like, oh, that person has a ball.
And then I'm like, give them a cookie.
Exactly. And you went to a cookie and then everything was okay. But it's actually kind of interesting with the whole refine when you start talking to people about the whole chaining part of it, that I don't think that's necessarily commonly taught in terms of reinforcing different pieces of it.
No.
Because it becomes this continuous chain, and then trying to then fix a piece of that, I think, can get just from observation.
I look at some of the long chains that the competition obedience people are doing, and Crystal, you guys are doing 45-minute routines.
I'm not there yet, but one day with my next dog, I will.
Right.
I don't want to give some sort of false sense of what I'm able to do right now with my dogs.
But even a brevet, right? I mean, that's longer than anything I have to do with my dog. And so, but it's still the whole idea that you go out and you're doing a very long, complicated, super complicated at a brevet, but later, they're very long chains of complex behaviors that you're asking your dog to do. You don't train it from beginning to end every single time. You're training little tiny chunks of it all of the time. And each little tiny chunk has its own set of criteria. And if you work on your down means when you go into a down, elbows are all the way on the ground. You stay in that position until released. I mean, that's the basis of your food refusal. That's the basis of all sorts of things. That's where you start with the little tiny pieces, and then you have to build all the other stuff on top of it.
Yep.
So how would you say that handlers can avoid setting their criteria like too high or too low?
If your dog can do it 3 times in a row in your current training session, you get to adjust one criteria, or you get to address 1D. One.
Or do you mean like the ultimate and like what the criteria?
Just in that session at that moment, like,
okay.
Yeah. So I mean, just in general, like if you're starting off, and you kind of know maybe where you are, but don't really know. Because I know that's something that a lot of people will ask me is they'll say, well, how do I even know where to start? Maybe this session or this behavior, even it could be.
Yeah. No, Robin's right. It's like you adjust one thing. It's like, it's keep it simple. Like, I think a lot of times we just try to overcomplicate things. And I think the other thing is if you have a really clear training objective at the beginning and you keep that training objective narrow and very specific, I think trying to figure out what that criteria is that you're going to hold becomes a whole lot easier. It's when we don't have that training objective and we go into our training session where we're really not quite sure what that criteria should be and how we should manipulate it.
Right. And you kind of get that whole, here's another big hint for anybody.
I think I know what she's going to say. And so I'm testing myself. I have it in my brain right now. And this is me saying, how well do I know Robin?
If at any point in your planning, if you have the thought, well, let's just see what happens.
Sorry. Called it.
That was the touchdown dance right there.
That was a touchdown dance.
Yeah, sorry. I'm like, she's going to say, if you say, let's see what happens. I'm like sitting here, I'm like, okay.
She's going to say this.
And I'm like,
the answer is stop there, right? Stop there.
Oh my gosh.
The answer is no. That's not how you train. That's how you test your dog, right? That's how you test. And so if you do have to do a little bit of that, but if you find yourself that that's how you regularly train, that's not training, that's testing, you're training in issues. So let's have a conversation of what skill do I need to train? What behavior do I need to train in my dog today? And actually, and it's not even in today, in this session, what behavior am I training my dog to do? And then what I've actually started doing to a lot of my students is go out and get a timer and set it for 5 minutes. And that's too long.
I was going to say, it depends on the behavior, right?
Yeah, it depends on what you're trying to do.
It does depend for your foundational stuff. If you're trying to teach a down and you're doing it as a very traditional, we're going to work on a down for this long.
Oof, that'd be way too long.
I know. You get 2 minutes, people. You get 2 minutes.
Even that, if you're doing postures and you're really working their muscles,
right.
Like, oh, goodness gracious.
Right. That's too long.
Yeah.
I mean,
repetition may bite you in the
butt. Right.
You just wanted to say butt.
I know I did.
I know. I'm trying to keep us from having to put the on our episode.
It's so good. Our mouths are so clean.
It's not our brains. Our mouths.
Yeah. I haven't stabbed anybody today, so it's all good. So
she's been by herself. That's why. But
yeah, I'm stuck out in the middle of nowhere on a farm.
I have a question I wrote down that I want to also kind of point out because I already know your answer, but you know how I ask things because it's what I think people might be thinking.
Yes.
So I'm thinking about dogs' natural styles and strengths. Do you adjust or how do you adjust criteria based on, I was going to say, have you ever, but I know you do. So So how do you adjust the dog's natural style or strengths instead of, because I know you said progression plan. So I think what I hear people ask sometimes is if I have a progression plan, it doesn't matter what kind of dog I have or what skills they have, like they can follow the progression plan. That's why it's there.
The answer is yes. However, just because I have a progression plan does not mean that my dogs all go through each step or get from step 1 to step 2 in the same way, because the dogs learn differently. They may not learn differently, but they're motivated differently. how Bristol puts together and how I have to adjust her criteria and how I have to adjust where and with what she is being reinforced for is different than Flash, which is different than Flair, which is different than Nico. And so that's where the train the dog in front of you comes in, that you still have to know all of those things about that particular dog. My progression plan may not change because the behavior that I'm trying to achieve is exactly the same, but how I get there is different depending on the dog.
They all kind of logic a little differently. And I actually had this conversation recently with somebody where she was saying, well, this is how I trained my first dog. And so I figured I would do the same thing with the second one. And I'm like, okay, that's a fine hypothesis, right? When you get started, you're going to find that your dog interprets things a little bit differently. And you could end up with a drastically different outcome. So, you have to really kind of pay attention to how is the dog listening? How are they perceiving? And what conclusions are they drawing? Because sometimes they can surprise us.
I know with criteria, there's a story that just happened yesterday. I was talking to a friend and she's teaching a fun nose work group that they don't have plans of competing. And one of the students has a really precocious little dog that is just really having a great time. And the alert was slamming their foot in the object. And I was like, but one thing I do want to point out in a gentle way is that I was that person one day. I went to a class and I thought it was kind of fun. And then here I am now. And so I guess we don't really know where you're going to go. And so it's about having that criteria and knowing the balance. You don't want to take the fun away from the person. Maybe it is going to be that fun thing that they never do anywhere besides their living room. But then also, look at us. We were all there one day where I went to an obedience class and saw him do agility. And we were doing parking brake sits.
Right.
And then I was like, that agility thing over there looks like a lot of fun. I had a hard time focusing on any obedience stuff because I kept wanting to watch the agility. And then, I was over there the next class running with the agility dogs. And then I'm going to competitions. And then, here I am letting dogs bite me and wear a suit. It is so important to know your goals.
Yes.
And that criteria. And maybe that person really will never explore anymore. But when I watched how much fun they were having, I thought, yeah, don't let that go on too long.
No. And sometimes when you know what the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th step after what that dog is doing, you know what that's going to turn into. And then you look at that dog and you're like, that is going to get really ugly really fast. So it was a really great opportunity to fix that now rather than just kind of going with it. I also, though, when I see this I also try to gauge where is the student's skill set now, because the solution I have to try to give them needs to be commensurate with what they're going to be successful in executing. And I can get them there maybe later, but is there any way that I can kind of at least manage it until I can get the student skill set to where it needs to be? Because that's another element, because we've got people coming in, I'm working with brand new folks and they're not coming in necessarily with really high skills. Sometimes I see students come in, they've got really high training skills and their dogs are really driven. I'm like, yeah, we can keep that criteria really high. Other times I need to kind of try to figure out what is the right combination of criteria for this dog and for this handler. And that's kind of that decision-making process that I have to go through. And because I'm also trying to figure out, I don't want you to cap your future capability or your future success. I want to maximize that, but I also want to make sure that you don't get frustrated and quit either.
Well, and I think that that's one of those things that's really kind of interesting about our little collaborative right here is we've got a lot of dogs behind us. We've also seen a lot of dogs.
Yes.
All three of us have seen a lot of dogs. And it's interesting that And that's one of those reasons why you go to trainers who have seen a lot of dogs. And it's interesting for me is now I start looking at a puppy who will do a behavior twice. And I'll look at that and be like, oh, I have to stop that now.
Yeah.
Because I know what that's now going to turn into in 2 months.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Right.
the more drive the puppy has, the more.
Right. And so, and when you get students and clients who come to you and you see like the box smashing, they're having a great time. And you're like, okay, I know that you say you never want to compete, but I just want to put this in your brain that if you might change your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I would rather have us think about this as a training challenge that we can work on right now so that you don't take that off the table. It's really hard. So yeah, that criteria, this clean behavior chains are always make me happy.
Yes. Yeah.
Takeaways. We're there.
We're
running out of
there.
time.
There's so much more we could talk about because I also want to talk about handler consistency.
I know. There's a lot. You should see my notes. I've still got 2 pages of notes I've been writing down. So we'll have to continue this.
Yes. We'll have handler consistency can be the next one.
Okay.
And all the rest of Crystal's bajillion notes because she's got them.
Don't lose them.
Right. Yeah.
Don't lose them. Take a picture. Send them to us. Yes.
So takeaways. What are your takeaways, friends? That was fun. I had fun.
That
today.
was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of my takeaways, but
Yeah.
Criteria is something that it's not cut and dried, right? You have to really think critically about it. And you really have to think about what is important and what can you maintain. And those are really 2 of the primary questions that I pose to myself when I'm trying to figure out what that behavior needs to end up looking like and what I need to emphasize.
I can always tell when somebody doesn't have their criteria picked out because their training is all over the board.
Mm-hmm.
Or they haven't pinpointed it exactly. And that's why I think people think I'm mean because I start asking them, what are you working on? What behavior you're looking for? All of those things. They don't understand. I do it in my brain to myself every time I train. And so it's second nature for me now. And I think you guys couldn't see it, but Crystal did the whole heads up
pop-up display
that I do when we're talking about scent theory. But anyway,
sorry.
We've been hanging out for too long.
I was doing it like mime so that you didn't have to get interrupted.
And I'm going to stab her the next time I see her.
See each other.
We can, but you can't see us because, oh my God, some days it'd be bad.
That was funny.
I just really think that I would rather have people start with their criteria really, really firm, do 3 fast repetitions, their dog knocks it out of the park, and then shift really fast. But know where your criteria shift is coming, know which D you're shifting and move there. Quickly move up through. Gee, that sounds a lot like, to me, like my whole generalization concept of green eggs and ham and row your boat. But anyway.
We'll get more into that next episode. That's
can.
a nice little
teaser. Okay.
So my takeaways. Setting criteria is a conversation. It's not a contract. And I think that might sound contrary, but you're constantly balancing what's ideal with what's achievable. And it's about being in that moment with that dog in that environment. And it's all without sacrificing your long-term standards. So I think that's where I see it more as that conversation. You're asking those questions. I think about the 3 things for me that really I just kept hearing over and over was the clarity, the consistency, and the flexibility. If you don't know what you're looking for, your dog doesn't know either.
Yes.
And you have to have the consistency being predictability. It's not perfection. That was something that it took me a long time to understand because I confused the 2. I thought that, I needed to be perfect. I needed to have perfect, consistent reps. It's two different things. Consistency is just predictability. And when they're not perfect, that's when you have to have flexibility. And that's about listening, about adjusting. It's the art of knowing when. And it's really about the art of knowing you and your dog and when you need to adjust in order to move forward.
Yes.
That's my takeaways.
A great takeaway.
There is a craft to training dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels a lot like dancing. And it's being able to read your partner and read the language and read the bodies of everything that's going around and all of the nuances. There's a science behind it, but it is still a craft. And so that's the criteria is absolutely the application of the craft. So thank you everybody for listening to us. You can find us in our typical channels of everything that we have got going on. I think this is going live at the end of March. So anybody got anything coming up?
Yeah, there's a whole term that starts April 1st. So,
all right. Stacy's got April 1st stuff. Crystal, what do you have going on besides the end of school?
I'll be 47.
Woohoo! Congratulations. Yay, happy birthday month.
You made it.
I know. Yeah. That's
made
right.
another year.
I'm telling
When
you.
you start getting older, you're like, yeah, I made it.
That's my achievement level. It's just, I get to be 47. So
yeah. Yay, team. And we're spinning up on some seminars. I have a couple openings in Muscatatuck in May, and I think I just have 2 left.
And you get to see all 3 of us there.
We will all 3 be there. We have a photographer who is coming in. She's was already planning on coming in, but so she'll be doing professional portraits for people as well. We have the amazing caterer and wink, wink, very large, very fresh source. Wink, wink. And so please make sure you register. I have 2 or 3 spots left. I haven't looked. I had a couple people who came in and left and schedules and all sorts of weird stuff.
Please come play with me.
Yes, that'd be great. So thank you everybody for listening and go train.
Canine Detection Collaborative.
We appreciate the time you spend with us. If you liked this episode, not only should you follow us so you don't miss the next one, but please also rate and review us in your favorite podcast app. For info on collaborating with us, go to K9DetectionCollaborative.com. That's K9DetectionCollaborative.com, where you can find our socials and pick up our latest monthly freebie. Join us again to talk training in the next episode.